If you haven't heard about Anchor by Spotify, it's the easiest way to make a podcast with everything you need all in one place. Let me explain. Anchor has tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. When hosting on Anchor, you can distribute your podcast on listening platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Amazon, and so many more places. It's everything you need to make a podcast all in one place. And best of all, it's totally free. Download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
Hello again, and welcome to another episode of Real Talk with RJ. If this is your first time listening, please don't forget to like and subscribe and follow so you know exactly when we release brand new episodes. Also, don't forget to share. If you like what you hear, share it with everyone you know. Now, I was thinking about what I could talk about this morning, and the subject of stupid people just came to mind. It started making me laugh. I was like, you know what? I wonder what we can get into talking about this subject because I'm pretty sure every one of us has dealt with what we would perceive to be stupid people. Now, I'm not talking about anyone who's mentally handicapped. I'm not even alluding to them in relation to the word stupid. I'm talking about people who are ridiculous, people who are extremely entitled in the most uncalled for situations. Like somebody who orders a simple meal, like a very small, simple $5, $6 meal at a fast food restaurant, and the way they treat the servers and the people who are taking the orders and the staff of that establishment, it's like they are acting as though they just bought the restaurant or they bought the establishment. They are demanding a specific type of service, and often it's a level of service that they themselves don't even offer other people. It's really interesting. I think that very often us as Americans, because I know that there's lots of other people from other countries listening, and in my experience, I have not encountered the level of entitlement that Americans tend to have on a daily basis. And as our normal baseline, I have not encountered this type of entitlement from any other countries. Now, I'm not saying that they don't exist. I'm just saying I have not personally encountered it in my life. I've not, I mean, I've met some Brits that, I don't know. I don't know if it's all or if it's like this, the culture of Britain or Great Britain or the English, but a number of Brits that I have met tend to look down upon other people who are not at their academic level or their cultural level. Now, granted, much of American culture in the legal system, medical, a lot of that stuff is actually based off of the English culture because the ancestry, the of or excuse me, the revolutionaries came from Great Britain. They came from London under the king, and then they established America. So it's natural that they took a lot of the things they agreed with, like our justice system and like senators and everything like that. They argue back and forth and don't get a lot done, which is like what the House of Lords does in Great Britain. But I just find it really interesting. There's a lot of similarities between the two. But having said that, there's just so many people that are just really dumb. They make big deals about nothing. We go to a restaurant and we demand a level of service. We demand that they be perfect. Like, "Oh my gosh, I ordered this very, very difficult drink that I can't even make myself, but I expect you to get it perfectly every time and within 5 minutes of me ordering it. And if you don't, I'll get mad. If it's not as hot as I want it, I get mad or I get irritated and I'll send it back." And I'm like, "Why? Why shouldn't I? I'm paying for it." Yeah, you're absolutely right. You are paying for it, and you should get the service that, is fair. But I think very often because of the technology and the privileges and the availability of things and how fast we can get them, because of that rapid progress of technology, we have become such an entitled country. And I speak specifically about America because I live in America. And although I know I have listeners from Ireland, and actually, a side note, I looked at my analytics yesterday, and I just found out that I have listeners in France as well. So and also Romania. Like, so I'm in 17 countries now. That's humbling. It's very incredible. Thank you all for your love and support. I really appreciate it, and I'm very grateful for every one of you who spends time listening to my voice. I really enjoy it. I really enjoy the times when I have listeners come on and actually talk with me and give feedback as well. And I enjoy just being a voice that kind of makes your day go a little easier. That's my hope, is that your day goes easier listening to things that I'm saying and that we all grow together. That's one of the biggest reasons why I invite people to participate, is because I want to grow as well. And sometimes they have things to say that help me grow. There have been other individuals who have gotten on and who just talk about nothing, and then they try to get on again, and I just won't respond to them because I want to talk about substance. I want to talk about something that matters, something that is related to the subject. But sometimes some of the listeners get on and then they want to talk about something completely unrelated that has nothing to do with the subject of focus. And then they just start rambling about nothing. So I'm just, yeah, I won't continue to entertain those conversations because neither of us are growing. But yeah, like we're just like there's officers out there. Or excuse me, before I get to that, lawyers, in order to be a lawyer in America, law school is like 3 years long. After you get your bachelor's degree, law school is like 3 years of, actually learning the law, learning about the various parts of the law, learning how to interpret the law, understand the law, and also argue the law. You get a very in-depth understanding of legal precedent. Yet, to be a police officer, it's usually on average like 6 months. That's usually what police academies tend to be, is about 6 months long. And these guys, and there's so much that they're learning, and a small portion is actually learning, or excuse me, a large portion, but relatively small, um, in comparison to the totality of the academy, is learned about law. You're learning about car stops, you're learning how to fire your weapon, you're learning how to drive your vehicle on dry roads, slick roads, wet roads, gravel roads. You're learning how to drive and chase and all these different things. So in the totality of time devoted to the police academy, a relatively or surprisingly small amount of time is dedicated to actually learning and understanding the law. So if it takes lawyers 3 years to learn actual law, why is it that police officers can only get 6 months to learn the law? It's interesting. I find that very interesting because a lot of police officers leave the academy really not knowing the law. We see it again and again. There's this movement on YouTube. It's been going on for a while. Um, called auditing the auditors. So like these individuals go to like to mail rooms or like public post offices, and they'll start recording in the public accessible areas. They're not bothering anybody, they're just standing there recording. And then, workers from the post office will come in there and say, "Oh, you can't record. I don't want to be recorded. I don't give you consent to record me." And they're saying, "Yeah, I don't need your consent." And you're like, "Well, this is a private area." It's like, "No, it's actually a government funded area, which means it's taxpayer funded, which means if it's accessible to the whole to the public, it's a public area." There's no places that say private personnel or authorized personnel only on this side of the desk. So I can go to the lobby and I can record anything I can see from public. And people are saying, "Well, I don't want my addresses, shown. I don't want you to record my addresses." And they don't understand. The law doesn't care how you feel about something, because the post office also has cameras, security cameras and stuff like that. They're not asking you for your permission. You walk into a post office, immediately you're being recorded by security cameras. Employees can use that information and do whatever they want with it if they wanted to, but they're not, that we know of. But the fact is that there's people out there who are just recording in these publicly accessible locations, and then the post office employees would call the police, or other, civilians waiting in line will call the police and say, "Hey, this guy's recording over here." And then when the police show up, they'll say, "You need to leave. You're being trespassed." And they're like, "How am I being trespassed? I'm not committing any crimes." They don't have the right to trespass me if I'm not breaking the law. And they're like, "Well, they don't want you recording in here." And then they will respond, "I don't care if they want me to record in here. It's on poster 7." I think that's what it's called. It's like one of the posters they have in the post office talks about the freedom of press to be able to record, etc., and take photographs and stuff like that of these publicly accessible locations. And the post office employees often don't know what's written on those posters out there. They just put them up. But then we can't really hold them, like be harsh against them like that, because for those of us who work in various companies, how many of us know actually what's on the posters all around our building that we work? We walk past them, we see them, we might glance at them, but we don't tend like most of us don't know the details of every poster placed. So there's a lot of ignorance because it's not we don't see that the information posted is important to us. Unless it's on the orientation video that we watch or the orientation handouts or whatnot that they actually go over. Most often than not, whenever we get something, we don't read it unless it's benefits to us, like the medical benefits and all the benefits of working at that country or excuse me, that company. That's when we'll actually pay attention because how does it affect us? How does it benefit me? That's what's important. So we'll pay attention to it. But anyway, these police officers would come over and try to tell the auditor no, but the fact is that the auditor actually knows the law, and the police officers are enforcing feelings rather than enforcing laws. They're saying they don't want to be recorded, but they're saying the auditors will say, I don't care if they want to be recorded. This is a public place. I have the right to do it. It's my First Amendment right. The freedom of press is part of the First Amendment, so I have the right to be here. What are you with the press? Yes, I am. What press are you with? I don't have to answer that. All right, let me see your ID. I don't have to give you my ID. I'm not committing a crime. This is not a stop and ID state. So like they go back and forth. And then when the auditor requests a supervisor, the supervisor comes and the supervisor tends to know the law a little bit more because they've dealt with these situations. So it's rare that you would see a police officer on these videos that actually does know the law and says, you know what, hey, we can't do anything about it. Sorry, he's not committing any crimes. He's in a public place and he can do that. It's his First Amendment. So it's rare, but it happens. So why am I saying that? It's because we have a lot of police officers, and I'm not saying that all cops are bad because there are a lot of really good, well-intentioned cops. But I think we put an unrealistic standard on police officers, especially when we don't know what they go through. And I've seen a number of shootings from like police officers shooting people, and um, as a veteran, I looked at the whole video. Like I've been around a lot of people in my ethnic culture who are black, um, and they were like, "Man, did you see that cop just kill that black man? That black man was unarmed. They just murdered him. They shot him in this and this and this." And I'll listen to it, what they're saying, and then I'll actually watch the video. But a lot of times, like what the news will do, the news will put on a small snippet, only the shooting of the black man. They'll shoot that black man with no problem, and then they'll cut the clip, and then I'll say, and then they'll ask me like, "How do you feel about that?" I was like, "Well, there's not enough information. We only see a part of the video. The video's cut. I need to see the whole video for me to actually form an opinion about what happened." And I think that's fair because how would you like if you made a statement that can be completely taken out of context, and then people form an opinion about just that statement without actually listening to the context? Just think like for example, if someone were to walk, if you're a guy and you're talking to another guy and like I had to bend her over and and thrust, and you said those words, but like a woman happened to walk in and hear you say just those words, and then she reports you to HR because she heard that and thought you were exchanging an inappropriate story in a workplace. But then when they call the person you're talking about, he was like, no, he was actually talking about giving her the Heimlich maneuver. This woman was a heavier woman and she was choking on something, and he had to, in order to actually get around her, he had to bend her over to find her sternum and then start thrusting with his hands to, like I'm just saying, like I that is a very simple example of something that can be taken out of context. We don't know all the details about every little thing, and we tend to form opinions without knowing all the information going on in what we believe we're seeing. People often believe that police officers are these elite trained individuals who can shoot the wings off a fly in flight. That's not true. Most cops never go back to the range unless you're SWAT. The SWAT team are always training with their weapons because this is part of the job. They need to be elite and they need to be exact. That's which is why they don't have high casualty rates when they're going in and doing operations. But police officers only shoot in the academy, and very often they have no idea what they're doing with their weapon. Like I've had buddies who train police officers at the range, and a lot of these cops do safety violations all the time where they're flagging, which means they're pointing their pistol at their partners or other people without even realizing it because they're not paying attention to the end of their gun. which we call in the military muzzle awareness. The muzzle is the hole end where the bullet comes out. For those of you who don't know really anything about guns, they would point their firearm at other members of the police department and not even realize they're doing it because they're not thinking about where their muzzle's pointed. And these safety officers who are the ones in charge of training them, they would come in and say, "What the heck are you doing?" They chew them out, chastise them, sit them down, embarrass them. But these guys are just like you and I. We often assume that these people should know certain things without knowing what kind of training they go through. And going back to that story about the black man getting shot, it was very unfortunate that this guy got shot in this particular video. And when I finally saw the whole clip, like the members of my ethnic community that were around me, they were like, "See, now you see the whole video. What do you think now?" And I say, "I would have shot him too." And they're like, "What? You're a traitor to your race." And I'm like, "No, no, 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 no. First of all, you have no idea what those cops are going through. They shot 12 shots each into this kid, which is a sign of panic. They weren't trying to murder him. They were panicking because they don't have this kind of training that you think they should have because that requires money. The police department's often very understaffed. And this isn't about taking their side, it's about let's understand facts. Police departments are often understaffed, overworked, and let's face it. Excuse me, let's face it. The level of danger that they face every time they stop a car, you can't comprehend unless you've experienced it. Every time you pull somebody over, you do not know if that's the last time you're going to stop a car. A police officer walks up and the first thing they do is, and especially if you're by yourself, if you have a partner, you got a better chance. But a lot of times cops don't have partners because they're so understaffed. So they walk up and approach a vehicle that's been pulled over, and the first thing they do is they actually put their hand on the trunk for two reasons. One, they're putting the fingerprints on that vehicle just in case something happens, they go missing or they were killed and they want to track it to a car. The fingerprints are now on that car and they can place that car at the scene of as the last known scene of that officer's um being or excuse me, his whereabouts or her whereabouts. And they're also making sure that the trunk is closed because it's been known to happen that people can be hiding in a trunk and the trunk is open. So as soon as the cop gets close enough, they'll open that trunk, jump out, and start shooting the cop. So there's multiple reasons why they touch that trunk to make sure it's closed. Next thing they do is they put their flashlight, especially if it's at dark, which is where the highest level of these things to happen, is likely to occur. They point their light inside the car to see what they can see through the windows. So often these police officers are on edge already because they have no idea who's in the car they just pulled over. They don't know if you have any warrants. They don't know if you have a gun and you're just running from the law. They don't know what's going on in that car other than the fact that they just stopped you for perceiving a violation. Now, there are cops that like to stop people for stereotypical reasons. That is true. I'm not gonna say it's not, it's 100% true, but it's very rare in comparison to the thousands upon thousands of car stops that happen every day. What we don't hear about are the and if you do the research, you can find it. I found it because I was curious if this was actually happening, because I heard the hype of, "Oh, black people getting shot by cops, black people getting shot by cops." So I wanna do the research. I looked up unarmed white people getting shot by police officers, and it is surprising how often it happens. We never hear about it. Why? Because the narrative of the media is that cops are killing black people. They wanna make it racism because racism sells. Racism gets people to watch TV. Racism gets people to fight against other people. Racism makes drama. Drama, if you look at the shows on TV right now, the number one shows that have the most viewers are the ones with the most drama. The Kardashian family has so much drama going on in there. They're always arguing and fighting with each other on TV, but it's all a facade. It's all an act. But that's what sells. People want to watch that stuff. So the news media, in an attempt to get more people watching their media, they're not going to go out there and saying, "Hey, guess what? White people are dying just like black people." Maybe I don't know what the rates are. I have not researched, if the rates are equal or if one is higher than the other. I don't know. I haven't looked that up, and I'll admit that. Having said that, when's the last time you heard about an unarmed white person or an unarmed Asian or an unarmed Latino being shot by the police? You don't hear about it on TV like that, but you do hear every time a black person gets shot by the cops. You hear about it. So when I talk to my buddies in my ethnic community about that one shooting where this kid was shot like 12 times by multiple officers, I said the reason why he was shot is because he turned away from the police officers and his hands immediately went to his waist. We have no idea, and the police officers had no idea why this young man put his hands near his waist. But what is the purpose of putting your hands by your waist? More often than not, it's to grab a firearm to return shooting. They're giving him orders again and again, get down on the ground, keep your hands up, get down on the ground, keep your hands up. He turns around and he puts his hands in his waist. Now, if you if you have a family at home waiting for you to come home and you're giving this person repeated instructions to get down on the ground and keep your hands up, and the first thing he does is turn away from you and put his hands in his waist, you have a split second to determine whether or not this person has a firearm. You can't wait until you see something because it could be too late. An experiment, if you think I'm lying, if you think you have incredible reflexes, if you think I'm lying, try this experiment. It's been known to prove this theory wrong. If you hold your fingers open, all right, so put your hand in a fist and then use your index finger and your thumb and keep them open maybe about 2 inches wide. If somebody were to put a $100 bill in between the middle of that space between your fingers being open, and then drop it, it's they're at the halfway point. Like they put that $100 bill halfway between the space in your fingers. So your thumb and your index finger are out and fully extended with about a 2 inch space in between the two. If you were to drop that $100 bill in between that space, the time it takes for you to realize that $100 bill has been dropped and is falling and that you have to catch it before it falls, the money would have already fallen through your fingers. We can't react that fast. So sometimes you have to assume that when a person is uh, reaching for their waist and turning around towards you, it's likely that they have a firearm. So your life and your safety is now on the line. And that's where the danger comes in. That's where you have to make a life and death decision in an instance. And sometimes it's not the right one, but it's the only one you have. Hey, Creed, welcome to the show, brother.
Oh, how you doing today?
I'm doing well. And yourself?
I'm doing good, real good. Thanks for asking. Question.
Mhm.
I'm kind of confused about something. Are you saying about your discussion? Was you implying that um equally black cops kill white civilians as equal as white cops assumably kill black civilians? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm not. I wasn't even actually using the race of cops. Like if you look at the history of police officers shooting black people, there are black cops shooting black people, and there are white cops shooting black people. There are black cops shooting white people. There are white cops shooting white people. Like it's not a pointed triggering thing. Like the majority of police officers out there are not waking up and saying, "I'm going to go kill a black guy." Like, that's not happening. These are individual situations, and what there's lots of different individuals, and what I'm saying is that, we're the amount of white people and Asians and Latinos who are being killed by police officers is not televised as often as black people being shot. Why? Because we act differently. Our cultures tend to respond very differently when a member of each individual culture is shot by a police officer, even if it's unarmed.
Do you do you think that if um the news would showcase do you think the black police officers kill white civilians as equally as white police officers assumably kill black civilians?
Oh no, like there people are shooting each race, but I don't think like I said, I haven't looked
I
at
mean,
the
that
statistics.
the reason why I'm asking is because that seems like to me is the reason why it's televised so much, or the reason why the news is involved is because someone done some stats. I don't think anyone if they're doing it just to glorify it or magnify it or bring it some I believe stats was done and the stats were shocking. So after that they started displaying the reason why the stats are like that just to inform the community on that. Like I don't think it was maybe a conspiracy against white cops. And the reason why I say that, I might have thought that if there wasn't so many indictments over the generations that had went down against black cops. I mean against white cops, specifically in New York, California, for um, being racist, or and doing things like that. Like it's fact, X and stone. So really, none of this is assumption. And then
Well,
again, I understand about the split second. No one can decide. And then those instances, they may be questionable if someone does something wrong. But in an instance where you see a black guy actually running and he's like almost a football field away from you, and then you start shooting at him from the back. You
yeah.
know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm 100% against those, and I think that any police officer who shoots a person with live ammunition in the back while they're running away from them, I think that that person deserves the death penalty. In my opinion, I think cops that shoot people in the back with live ammunition deserve the death penalty. But I am not against shooting less lethal rounds at somebody who's running away because that person could run away and run into someone else's house and cause a bigger
Of
crime.
course, of
So I
course,
think
of
like
course.
shooting him in the back with a beanbag or rubber bullets to take him down or a taser, I'm all for that. But
I
like
mean, I
shooting a
wouldn't, I
person in the
wouldn't
back to
oppose,
kill him, nah.
I wouldn't oppose to an officer shooting a non-deadly weapon to stop anyone that they assume is a criminal.
Yeah,
I believe that their judgments are extremely fair. I just don't believe that sometimes they're pop second decision making and judgments, and also to be able to separate their personal phobias, fears, and biases from their job. In all
yeah.
cases, I don't think it's right. It's orderly.
I agree, and I think one of the reasons why we see these types of shootings so often is because of technology. Like, you can be in California and then be in New York and then be like, you can see 3 or 4 different cities in 3 or 4 different states on one click. Because the internet is smaller than you think. Like the accessible or the access to information is so much more intimate, so much closer that we can see a lot more shootings in one time as opposed to seeing all the shootings that just happened in California
Yeah,
today.
I agree. That's one way. That's one reason, definitely. And another reason could be the fact that the hiring policy.
I definitely would like to consider. I would definitely want to consider or continue this conversation. But yeah, like there's so much going on right now, but like what we don't see often are the thousands upon thousands, the tens of thousands of car stops that are successful, nonviolent, nothing happens, everything goes because those don't sell. Like, so I'm not saying I'm not trying to allude and say that more blacks are killed by cops than whites, and I'm not trying to make the antithesis of that argument by saying more whites are killed. I'm just saying that what we like a problem that we have, it is not, in my opinion, it's not the number one problem in this country. Racism is not the number one problem in this country. A problem in the country is that unarmed people are being shot due to lack of training, lack of tactical training from police officers because of budget controls, because of lack of personnel in the police department that actually can do this. You don't see the SWAT team having these levels of shooting unarmed people, at the same rate that regular police officers are doing. And that's just because they're not as trained. And why are they not trained to that level? Because the taxpayers don't want to pay it. And also we have a lot of greedy politicians who would rather put that money in their pockets rather than, you know, enforcing more training on the police department to make sure that they don't shoot unarmed people in the wrong test.
And then also sometimes you have to deal with cultural competence, how to react to certain cultures that, you may think they want to kill you, but they just may be just doing a gesture or saying something that you just looking at it the wrong way. But anyway, I mean, there's so many different things and different reasons. But another thing is a hiring policy.
Hmm.
Like, for example, you might have it in a 75% African American community, you might only have 5% of the officers are African American. So when they respond to a call, you have 10 good old boys looking at you, and um, just no one can really understand what's going on or know how to diffuse the situation, right? So it escalates, and then they have their fears and phobias because they can't separate their job from their personal beliefs, and it just tailspin into a whole bunch of unnecessary stuff.
Well, you bring up a good point. And I can understand where you're coming from on that part, because diversity, lack of diversity in the workplace is actually it's a big issue. Having said that, I've thought about this as well, and there are tons of chiefs of police who are black, deputy chiefs who are black, lieutenants, sergeants, captains, watch commanders who are black. There are tons of black officers, but one of the reasons why there's such a shortage of black officers is because of the perspective of the black community toward the police department. We often look at cops because of the media and the type of information we're fed. We look at cops as racists who target blacks. That's what
Well, you gotta
the
look at where it
politicians
came
teach
from
us. Yeah, but I get it. Like the
because if
history
you
of the
look at
police
cops, they
department.
were
Say again.
what it was. They were basically originally cops were just basically what
They're slave
mercenaries
hunters.
and people. The slave owners hired them to come to the north around New England and Rhode Island and places that was free and hunt down slaves that had escaped and bring them back.
You're absolutely right. And
So you know what
are
I'm
you
saying?
also
So
aware that out of those slave owners, a lot of them were also black?
yeah, I'm well. Yeah, I'm well outside of the color. I
And
mean, the cop's responsibility was to catch you from freedom and bring you back to slavery.
yes, you're absolutely right. But that part as it
And it
started,
evolved. It has evolved,
yes,
but as it evolved, you got to remember we follow the people before us, our ancestors, and also our caregivers, fears and phobias before we 8 years old. So by the
mhm,
time you 8, you already formed the opinion about what you believe the police officer's responsibility job is. And if you grew up in a suppressed area and you already have bitterness behind the system as a whole, I mean, you may villainize the cop, because your parents or your people may have not gave them the highest regard. So just on the sake, just to defend the cop or whatever, I mean, that you have to consider that stuff too.
oh yeah, no, you bring up a good point. There are lots of police officers out. I mean, I believe that police officers can do more to engage with the community, but I believe that there are a number of exceptional cops who decided to join the police force so that they can be create more good cops. One of my good
Yeah.
friends, his name is Daniel Hahn. He's actually the chief of police in Sacramento, California. That's where I'm from.
Hmm.
And he's black. And I watched him rise up from being a normal beat officer all the way to being a sergeant, lieutenant, and now the chief of police. One of
Well,
my
that's the
uncles
thing.
was a chief, and I was in a ghetto area. I was Sacramento, Del Paso Heights is a really hardcore area. And I was part of that. But I believe that we have the ability to free ourselves from that illusion that cops are out to get us. Yes, there are many officers out there who are power hungry, who get no respect in their homes, and maybe they were bullied when they were in high school and they want to, wave their weight and their power around and make other people's lives miserable. I believe this. I've seen it. I've seen cops with low self-esteem become sheriffs and become police officers so that they can bully other people and exert the type of power and control over other individuals that they have never been able to do during high school or whatnot. Having said that, there's so many issues with the police department, but we often complain about how they're doing things, yet we don't actually want to join the police department to help them out and become better officers and improve the situation ourselves by by growing and becoming in charge. Now, there's lots of work to be done in that instance. You can't just join the police department and then start changing stuff. You got to work your butt off, which means you'll probably have to go along to get along so that you can get promoted because there's a lot of politics involved in some of these departments. But who's to stop you from getting up and being that officer that can change an entire department once you get in, once you work hard? One of the reasons why there's a lack of diversity in blacks is not because they're stopping blacks from joining. It's because a lot of blacks don't want to join. And just like Creed was saying, we tend to adopt the perspective, fears, and theologies of those who raise us. Yeah, you're absolutely right. My mom, you know, was kind of she always was ever since I was 5 years old, she would tell us, "Oh, there's a cop behind us. Keep your hands away from your waist. Do not put your hands near your waist." This is how I was indoctrinated or taught as a child. Don't put your hands near your waist when a cop comes around you. Keep your hands away from your waist. Keep your hands visible, and make sure that police officers can see your hands at all times when they're around you and engaging with you. Now, one of the things that I've seen also to help yourself in a situation where you're about to get a ticket or you've been pulled over, one of the things to do is make the police officer feel safe. If the police officer feels safe, they're more likely to relax because they don't know you, especially at night. So if you get pulled over at night, a lot of people say don't roll your windows down. Yeah, you don't have to if you don't want to. But if you want the police officer to be calm, roll the driver's side window down enough to where you can talk with the officer, and then put your dome light on so that they can see inside the car. Put excuse me, put your keys on the dash in the middle, like out of reach from either officer. Make sure your doors are locked, and because honestly, we don't know if it's a real cop too. It could be a cop and it could be, a poser just playing around. And but if you're smart enough, you can know that this is an actual officer. Like they'll reveal themselves. Like people who like for example, individuals who like try to complain or claim that they are veterans in the military. A veteran knows if you talk to somebody who's never been in the military, they're not going to answer specific questions the right way. They're not gonna know the jargon, they're not gonna know certain words of, like, what is an MOS, military occupational specialty, which means that's your job. They won't answer the question right, and more often than not, people who try to pretend to be, you know, um, military, it's rare. I've never heard anyone say, "Oh, yeah, I'm a cook in the military." No, they always wanna be special forces and claim some type of team that they found off of Call of Duty Black Ops or something like that, a team that doesn't exist. Like, "Oh, yeah, I was, SEAL Team 7 or I was SEAL Team 12." Like, "Oh, really? SEAL Team 12?" Like, "Yeah, it was crazy, man. I was over there in Desert Storm, and then I went over here to Iraq and in Operation Iraqi tours, and then I repelled off of the Eiffel Tower because there was a terrorist in there." Like, "Oh man, that's serious. Like, man, thank you for your service. No problem. I did it for the country." Like, shut up, bro. There's no SEAL Team 12. What are you talking about? But there's tons of people out there that would do this. They'll put on their uniform and you could tell immediately when they wear the uniform that they're not real because you know how a uniform is supposed to look. The very specific and strict standards that the military has in wearing that uniform, they'll wear it and not know that they're out of regulation. It looks great to them. They look awesome in their own eyes, but to you, it looks like garbage because it's not worn the right way. So you immediately walk over and ask them for their cat card, and or which is their military ID card, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I don't have it," because they don't know what it is. But like, so yeah, that's a sidebar. But like to saying for like a police officer, you could tell if an officer is just sitting there fumbling around and making up nonsensical words, you can automatically, or you can pretty quickly tell this is a fake. But especially if the lights don't match. If you got one light that's orange and and another light that's purple, you're like, nah, something's wrong here. So I mean, I started talking about this because we're talking about dealing with stupid people, but I wanted to talk about this as well because a lot of people think that cops are very elite when they're not. These are average people just like you and I. They make mistakes too. So I think we need to cut them some slack. And I think we need to stop being so quick to say that cops are out to get black people. Cops as a whole are not out to get black people. There are police officers out there who are out to get black people. Yes. But the police department doesn't wake up and say, "All right, guys, ready, roll call. All right, you guys are going to go catch 10 black people each. I want you to put 10 black." They're not out there doing that. There's lots of black cops. There's lots of black leadership in the police departments. We don't hear about that. We don't see it because it doesn't fit the narrative of racism. But yes, there are a lot of black people who are killed, and there are a lot of white people who are killed. I don't know who gets killed more. Honestly, I can easily make a claim in saying, of course, we all know blacks get killed more. I can make that claim, but I don't have facts. I don't have the numbers in front of me to make that claim, so I'm not going to make that claim. Because of the Clinton crime bill, the Joe Biden crime bill, like that actually put more police officers. I remember watching Hillary Clinton talk about we want to put more police officers in urban areas so that they can engage with the community and make the communities better. That's how they presented it to us. But what actually happens, what a lot of people don't know, is that police officers have a quota. It's illegal to have a quota, so they don't call it a quota. But they explain to the police officers that if you don't give out enough tickets, if you don't give out enough or you don't make enough arrests, then we show the people that control our budget that we don't need this many officers, and they're going to start laying officers out. So if you want to keep your job, you're going to need to put people in jail, and you're going to need to give out a lot of tickets. So we can show that the amount of crime happening and the amount of ticket violations happening necessitates this amount of personnel. That's a quota. It's job security. So when you think about, the prisons releasing tons of people saying, yeah, we're overcrowded, we're going to release tons of people. They want to do all the like one of the things they do in California's prisons is they start little fights amongst the racist groups or the race groups, because in California prisons, they like the blacks don't hang out with whites, don't hang out with Latinos. Like they have rivals for war, but they don't hang out with each other and associate with each other. It's against the rules for those inmates. But what they'll do when everything's going nice and easy, nice and peaceful, these guards will often pick little fights and start problems among the races. That way, there's something happening and they can report there was a riot or there's a big problem right here. We have to lock everyone down. We need more personnel. It's job security. That's all it is. It's job security. A lot of these politicians are making money. If you follow the money, and you'll find the villains. A lot of these politicians out there are sitting on the boards of these private prisons. They're making money based off of how many people they put in prisons. So to put more police officers in an urban area where blacks or Latinos are the majority, by these quota rules for job security, they're going to, because this is where they work, they're going to make more arrests. They need to make more arrests. They need to find things to arrest you on. It's just common sense. Is it fair? Absolutely not. It sucks to be the recipient of this type of stuff. But the fact is that's life. This is the type of bills that have been passed, and these are the type of things we experience. When you see lots of cops in an area, they're not there to show presence of police officers. They're there to find people to arrest them so they can keep their jobs. So if the majority of people in the area they're assigned to patrol look a certain way, they're just on the chopping block. And it's unfair. It sucks. That's how things actually work in this world. Why? Because we are allowing it to. We keep electing the same people and then get mad when the same stuff keeps happening. We keep electing these same people. We keep giving our power and our rights to the same individuals who only want to screw us over. And then we get mad, like, oh my gosh, our kids are getting dumber and dumber and the school systems are messed up. Why do you keep electing that same idiotic superintendent who drives this incredible car and your kids are suffering? You have the power to unite the entire school district and say, we're going to get you out of office if you don't stop indoctrinating our kids with this nonsense. And then they don't want to listen to you. They hear you, they laugh at you, and then they go on and do what they're going to do. Well, when you threaten their jobs and say, all right, I'm going to get, 1,000 people to sign this petition and we're going to get you all out of office. And then I'm going to run and take charge of this because I know this needs to be done. When you start doing that, people start playing ball. But as long as we're divided, these people are going to continue to convince us that they're the answer, they're the savior, that they have the power. But you don't understand. The most legendary declaration of this country starts with "we the people." That's where the power for the government comes from. It's we the people. But we keep foolishly we're selling our rights for nothing. If somebody walked up and say, "Hey, I love your house. I want to buy it from you. You own a home, a beautiful home." If someone walks up to you and goes, "I want to buy your home," and you go, "How much are you willing to pay for it?" And they go, "Nothing. Just give it to me." You're gonna be like, "You're out of your mind. I'm not giving you my house. You making good. If you give me the right number, I'll give it to you." We're like, "Nah, just give it to me, and I'll make you an empty promise that sounds beautiful. I'm gonna give you this beautiful, you know, um, I'll give you your own island. Can I have that in writing?" Nah, not in writing, but I promise you, I'll give you an island. You're like, sounds good to me, and you give them your house. You never get the island. Now you're homeless. That's essentially what we're doing to the government. We're giving our rights. We're electing the same people who keep making these empty promises, and then we get screwed over. And it's sad. Like A lot of crime in urban communities. Look at the different communities. If you want to just take off your racist eyes. Like what I mean by that is don't look at this through the eyes of racism. Don't look at this through the eyes of your skin color or your culture. Look at it as facts. Look at what's actually happening. When you put in like when there's a bunch of Latinos in a neighborhood, I'm pretty sure every one of us has experienced or has been through or is familiar with a Latino neighborhood. Look at the Latino neighborhood. Look at how the houses look at how the lawns look at how the camaraderie is, look at look at the peace in those neighborhoods. Then go to a majority white neighborhood. Look at how the lawns look at how the trash and how clean it is. Look at the neighborhood qualities. Look at a Jewish neighborhood. Look at an Asian neighborhood. Look at the qualities of these places because people tend to move in and they go with their own. That's just kind of how we are. We like to go with people who get it, who get us, who share common qualities with us, and then go to an area that's predominantly black. I've lived in these areas throughout my life. The graffiti, the bars on the windows, the house invasions, the break-ins, the shootings, the gang activity. The police aren't forcing us to do that. We're doing that to ourselves. And then we want to blame politicians and everyone else for what we do to ourselves. This is actually happening. Look and go see it with your own eyes. We can easily blame other people for the reason we do things, but until we take responsibility for our own actions, we're going to continue to shoot ourselves in the feet while blaming someone else for pulling the trigger. We have the power to make our schools better. We have the power to improve our quality of life. Do you know that by getting a neighborhood, by talking to your neighbors and actually um like coming to an agreement about keeping your lawns green and keeping your lawns beautiful, painting your houses to look nicer, you could increase the value of your home by having neighbors that get it as well. You take those bars off your windows and the crime goes down because we're just making an agreement and say, "Hey, if our homes are gonna be worth more, we can sell them for more." But as long as we got these bars on our windows, they're not gonna be worth as much. As long as we have graffiti and everything going on in these neighborhoods, it's not gonna be worth as much. So a lot of the crime is happening and, cops are being sent there because more crime is happening. I mean, it's just a revolving door. It really is. And it's sad. It's a sad revolving door in society right now. But we're dealing with stupid people. We're dealing with people who are pointing the finger at other people when they themselves are the problem. We are putting unrealistic expectations on other people because we believe they should do their job a certain way when we have no idea what entails their job. We think cops should do a job a certain way without knowing what it is that they go through every day. We only see the interactions on TV and also when we get pulled over, we see the interaction, but we have no idea what that cop went through that day. You may be an operator on, or like a customer service representative, and you could start off your day talking, "Hey, how you doing? Thank you so much for calling Express," or whatever the case may be. And you're starting off great. And then you have a couple of really irritating calls. The tone of your voice is probably going to change at the end of the day. Or when you're tired, you just want to go home. Your enthusiasm, your tone is a little more disrespectful than you'd like it to be, but you're tired. You're human. We don't know the details that make up the person wearing the badge or on the other side of that phone. In fact, when I was going to school for medical assisting, we used to like this is a long time ago. Um, we used to practice blood draws and injections on each other. We didn't use dummies or anything like that. We actually practiced this stuff on each other. I got to know these people, and I was like, dude, I don't want you injecting me, man. You use drugs, man. I don't want you injecting me. Like, if you knew the backstory of a lot of the nurses, how often these nurses and doctors party and just go crazy and drink, and some of them do drugs because it's the only way they can keep the energy and focus, or at least they believe it's the only way to keep energy and focus, to do their job and work a 16 plus hour shift. If you knew the backstory of a lot of these nurses and doctors, you would not want them touching you. And I'm sure if we knew more details about certain people, we'd be like, "Yeah, I don't want you to touch me either," because maybe the doctor that's actually doing about to do surgery on your heart who's a renowned surgery, happens to be a devil worshiper. And if you knew that, you'd be like, yeah, I don't want you touching me. But you don't know that. You don't know their backstory. Sometimes knowing the backstory is a little more dangerous. But the fact is that if we were to understand and show a little more mercy to people and show a little more patience, even though we're in a hurry, life will be a lot better. Dealing with stupid people is something that often can't be avoided. But if you don't give them power over your mood, you win that battle every time. Somebody is like I've driven through the streets when the freeway is a little wet and I'd see a person doing at least 100 just driving crazy. And when he comes up behind me, like I get irritated because I'm like, dude, you better not hit my car. You better not hit my car. And then he swerves around and gets around me and I'm just mad. Like I just like I have the immediate desire to hit my gas and move faster so I can pace next to a slower car so he can't get around. But then I'm like, you know what? Stop. If he's that much in a hurry, I don't know why he's in a hurry. Maybe his wife is pregnant, or maybe he's got to use the restroom. Maybe there's a reason why they're going so fast. That doesn't make him stupid. Maybe they're just, you know, one of those impatient people who just wants to hurry up and get home and cares only about himself. But maybe it's a person that really has an emergency is trying to get to it. So let him go. Sometimes if somebody really wants something so bad, maybe there's a reason that they want it that bad. Is it that important to you? If somebody doesn't get your order right the first time, you can politely say, "Hey, I apologize. Would you mind making this hotter?" Or "There's no drizzle in here. I asked for drizzle." And like, "Oh, okay, thank you. All right, cool." It's not easy to work in Starbucks and do these drinks specifically with the tons of different modifications that these people have. It doesn't make them stupid just because they can't get the job right. Maybe it's their first day. Maybe they're still new. But it doesn't make the customer stupid when they start acting like they own the restaurant. It makes these activists out there who are pretending like I see all these posters out there saying, "We're with the women of Iran." I'm like, "That looks nice, but what have you actually done for the women of Iran? Have you sent money to the women of Iran? Have you actually sent packages out there to the women of Iran? Have you gone out to Iran itself to try to help these women and help get them to America or help improve their life? Have you talked to the leadership of Iran? Oh, no, you just put up a poster? Shut up. I don't wanna hear it. That's not activism, that's virtue signaling. And that's what people are under the assumption that activism is today. I'm just gonna make a post about it. "Oh, I made a difference. I'm gonna make a TikTok about this issue. Oh, I made a difference. I'm gonna post this on my Instagram and my story so that everyone can see, look at me. I care about the homeless." And then as soon as that picture is done, they get up and get back in their Mercedes and then leave. When the George Floyd riots happened in Los Angeles, the BLM riots, there were people out there. I saw these women out there picking up power tools, and they would ask, "Hey, can I use a power tool real fast and just, like, take a picture?" And they're like, "Yeah." And they walk up and make it look like they're actually sealing off the windows that were broken with, some plywood. So all they did was just put a drill in one of the screws that have already been screwed in, and then they take a picture, and they go, "Here you go, thank you so much," and get back in the car and leave. And then they post it on their social media, just helping out with the needy or something like that. It's like, "Oh my gosh." I really hope every one of those individuals who are fake, enthusiasts or fake activists, I hope they all get, discovered, and I hope they get shamed. Because if you're gonna do something, and I like certain people that go out and do things without showing their face on social media. They just go out and film it just so that people can see this is what your money's going to. That's cool. But then other individuals who want to film themselves doing it, see, look what I did. Look what I did. That's not sincerity. That's just they're doing it for views. They're doing it for money. I've helped tons of people. I don't. I used to run a food truck, and um, one day I used a lot of the food and a lot of the money that we received so that we can feed lots of people out of my own pocket. I did that, but I didn't film it because I wasn't doing it for the praise and attention of other people. I did it because I wanted God to see it. He blessed me, and I wanted to be a blessing to someone else. I didn't care that these people were doing drugs. I didn't care that like that wasn't my focus. Like, oh, I don't want to give you food because you're doing drugs. I'm like, no, you're hungry. God didn't say feed the hungry that are sober. No, he said feed the hungry. And that's what I went to go do. There were no film crews, there were no social media. I didn't record or even take pictures of it. That was a memory that stays in my head and the head of the person that was doing it with me. That's where it stopped. So how do you deal with stupid people? What are some of the things you do to deal with stupid people? Because let's face it, there's a lot of stupid people out there. I've had discussions with individuals who like super liberal, and there's nothing wrong with a person being super liberal, having your beliefs and everything. That's fine. You want to be that cool. But where the problem is for me is where it is not okay, or it's you will not listen to anything I say. It's only okay when you talk, you're right, and that's it. Anyone who has a view outside of you is homophobic, racist, uh, a Nazi, or all this other crap. And I'm just like, come on now. You don't have to shame somebody because they have a different opinion of you. It's okay to have a different opinion. The differences in the painting is what makes it a work of art. Works of art are beautiful because they're not all one color. Otherwise, it'd be just a canvas. It'd be just one background. We need different strokes and different paintings and different colors and different techniques that actually make up the work of art. So having diversity is important because we're biased toward ourselves. We need Democrats, we need Republicans, and we need independents. We need them working together so that they can find these different perspectives, actually making our country better. But unfortunately, we have a large number of Republicans who are corrupt and who are swamp rats. And our independents are often muted because they don't fall into one of the two categories. So we rarely ever know what the independent sector is saying. And then the Democrats are voting party over people. They had the country for 2 years and pretty much gave all of our money to Ukraine. And I think it's important for us to take care of our allies and stuff like that. I think it's very important for us to take care of our allies. Having said that, I think it's even more important to clean our own house first before we help other people clean theirs. It's not okay to give our money to other countries when we are struggling here with inflation, with freaking eggs at $7 right now. A dozen eggs. I remember when eggs were like 2.99. How in the heck is a dozen eggs worth more than fuel? When did that happen? It's so sad. It's sad that we're giving tens of billions of dollars to Ukraine, yet people can't even feed their families here. That's what happens when you have politicians who are corrupt, who care more about power and controlling you rather than being the representative for you. That's what happens when you censor one group of people and then let the other group of people speak rampant and say whatever they want. That's the kind of stuff that happens. The country gets super divided and the resources go outside rather than where they're needed most. I really hope for the best for our allies and that they're able to defend themselves and that we're able to help where we can. But I really think that we need to start investing more money in our own country. I think that we need to start investing more money in our own communities. Rather than going to Costco and these major corporate places, maybe we can start shopping at mom and pop spots to help support them a little more so that they can increase the communal presence when it's convenient. I mean, you definitely don't wanna go somewhere and, buy milk at $10 a gallon just because it's a local mom and pop spot. You definitely wanna get a bargain. But I'm saying where we can help our local businesses, let's do it. Let's invest in each other more. Let's unite each other more. Let's stop externalizing our profits and our funds. Let's start internalizing it. Let's start investing in ourselves, in our homes, in our communities. Let's let's grow together. For every black person out there listening right now, if you don't know Latinos and Latino culture, get out there and learn about them. They're incredible people. Latinos, likewise to blacks, whites to anyone else. Everyone get to know other people's cultures. You don't have to agree with certain practices of the culture, but get to know it. Maybe you might see something that is incredible. Maybe you might learn about something that helps you understand that person and their practices more often. I'm a Christian. I have different views from Muslims, but I have Muslim friends, and I every time I see a Muslim, I know what it is they believe and what they stand for, according to the Quran and their culture. And I always say assalamu alaikum to them, and out of respect to acknowledge their faith and out of respect to their faith. I love interacting with them and speaking with them. And hey, how you doing, brother? I call them brother as well, even though we have different beliefs. I call them brother. When I see the tons of Jewish individuals over here in Los Angeles, I always say shalom to them. And if it's Friday evening or if it's Saturday, I say Shabbat shalom. Or the sun's going down, Shabbat shalom, which means Sabbath day peace. I say hello in 28 languages, and the reason why is because and there's a lot of stereotypes against my culture. And one of the ways I break those down is, and I've said this in past broadcasts, I break those barriers down by saying hello with the proper pronunciation in that person's language. And it builds a bridge. It takes away that stereotypical perspective that not all of us are the same. And then they get a chance to get to know me. And then I get to open their eyes to see that not all of us are the same, that not all of us are bad. There's good and bad in every culture. I have lots of very good Jewish acquaintances, Korean, Chinese, Hmong, Laos, uh, Polynesian, um, like lots of great associates and friends and buddies in my life. Like there's lots of Indians, like Hindi Indians, Punjabi Indians that know my face as well. Whenever I go into these businesses and I say hello to them, Shashrikal and or Namaste, depending on what it is they practice. I'm able to say hello to them in their culture, and they know that I'm not Indian. They laugh with me, and I talk about some of the movies from Indian culture, and they're like, "You seen that movie?" I'm like, "Yeah, I seen. I love that movie." Oh my gosh, everybody has seen that movie. It's a very good movie. And I started laughing, and we just have great conversations. I love the Indian culture. Their Bollywood movies are awesome. I love the dancing and the singing stuff like that. But I think what makes a stupid person is often ignorance. Pride and ignorance make stupid people. Because if you're too proud, you won't learn anything. If you're a know-it-all, it comes from pride. No one can teach you anything, so you end up being the dumbest person in the warehouse because you know everything. In a relationship, you know everything, so your partner can't teach you anything. You never grow, and you become a stupid member of that family. Do you wanna tell a waitress or excuse me, a server on how to do their job when you've never served in your life like that? You've never done a server's job. You don't understand what it takes to do their job. You become a stupid person because you assume you know what they do. Dealing with stupid people necessitates humility. It's like fire and water. If you wanna put out a fire, you need water or dirt. You get enough dirt, you can put it out as well. But you need the opposite of that force. So if you're dealing with a stupid person, use humility, not pride. Because using pride against a stupid person is probably like fighting fire with fire. And maybe your fire's stronger, but the fact is that it's going to take a lot more fire to put out a fire, and the damage tends to be twice as much damage rather than just using water. And humility is the response to pride. Love is a response to hate. Wisdom and education are the response to ignorance and stupidity. So if there's anything you take from this when dealing with stupid people, use humility, use patience, and extend mercy. Not because they deserve it, because we don't deserve it, but because we need it. And as always, I love to welcome anyone who has anything they like to talk about, like some of the stupid people they've encountered, um, some of the experiences they've had with stupid people, and maybe how they dealt with it. Because now, like now talking about politics is such a hot issue. It's a hot topic issue. It's really it's really, really bad right now. Like, you just can't have a conversation about politics and it just be a conversation anymore. Now you have a conversation about politics, you lose your job, like stuff starts happening to you. Your life gets turned upside down, and people start just they immediately censor you in the worst ways, and you lose so much, and so much is labeled upon you. It's really sad. Like, life has gotten really crazy. Hey, Jason, one of my brothers, how you guys doing? How you doing, brother?
I'm all good. And yourself?
Outstanding. Always good to have you on the show.
So, when you say stupid people, what do you deem as like what would be an example of a stupid person?
Karen's.
Because you gotta nah, Karens aren't stupid. They're just picky.
Uh,
You really think about it.
I think
Everyone has a prejudice, right? But doesn't mean it's a sign of your intelligence.
I think Karen, like the term Karen applies to a wide range of people. Like, you see Karens out there, like persecuting kids for selling candy on the corner. Like, there's
Mm-hmm.
Karens for lots of things. Like, stupid people are acting on ignorance. They're assuming they know something that they don't when they don't.
Mm-hmm.
People who have called the police on other individuals because they don't look like they live in that apartment complex. Those are Karens, and
Right.
and I believe stupid people are individuals who act on ignorance rather than truly assessing a situation or truly knowing what's going on with the scenario.
I mean, because it can be translated in so many different ways. I mean, because like I've seen extremely prejudicial and very intelligent people, and they're either trying to just guard their property, guard their kids or their family or their neighborhood, and we can pass that label of Karen on somebody very easily
True.
without having a full range of capacity. Let's like moving like I'm Mexican, right? Moving me into an all white neighborhood, I look white. But if you look at my girl, she's dark, you know, and they'd be like, is she your maid? They could think that, right? Because that's not in their normal world. They're in a secluded world.
Mhm.
But it doesn't make them ignorant, it doesn't make them stupid. They're just not familiar. And it's like, and I really look about how I really label people stupid. Like, if you openly knew and kept on doing something the same way, and you knew that you were going to hurt somebody or make a mistake on purpose, then I think that is stupidity. I think that's insanity. But, at the same time, you're kind of talking about, politics. We should do this, we should do that. And my question is, what decisions right now are you aware of that in any shape or form our government is making the right choice? Are you aware of that? Because
Yeah.
like if we're easy to criticize our government, you also have to understand what are they doing right? Just because it's not convenient, and if the system is broke and we keep saying, well, let's fix it, let's fix it. Well, who's the stupid ones? Us or them? Because I was reading something like Law 31, I believe, is in the 48 Laws of Power, and it literally talks about Ivan the Terrible, about how he got the people to reunify under him. He's like, look, hey, you know what? If you think I'm such a bad leader, tell you what, took all his gold, put it on sleds, took all his provisions, moved out of Moscow, went to another town, and then they were flipping out because the boyars or the young princes who supposedly has some kind of power, they ended up like they were going to threaten to take over the country, and the peasants and the shopkeepers like, well, this is going out of chaos. And he basically said, the only way I'm going to come back is if you give me absolute power, no questions about it. And if I come back, I will lead the way. Well, guess what? Is either follow him or follow the young princes who were tribal and fought over each other. So the lesson is control the options, and people are now left with which is the best of the lesser two options, the lower two choices.
Yep.
And this is where I tell people, stop voting in parties. Stop telling and registering under a party. You vote, and guess what? They lose their power, but they don't want to do that because I'd rather choose one side because they're most likely to represent my values. That to me is very ignorant when you think only in group format. When the real power is if people did vote anonymously, didn't say nothing about who they voted for, it literally changes the message. Then therefore the performance has to start changing. But see, we can't take accountability for that because we operate on a value of influence and sensationalism, and which most resonates with me. Like me, there are parts of our government that work very well, and there are parts that don't work well. And I
Agreed.
understand that, so it's really something to look at and think about what we deem is, stupid.
Well said, man. Seriously, well said. You bring up a great point because like you're saying, like the insanity situation. Um, we tend to elect the same people, and me, I identify as a Republican because the Republicans freed the slaves. The Republicans, um, have tend to represent the people a lot more, and they work for the middle class. They fight for the middle class. They tend to cut taxes that actually benefit the middle class because we keep hearing that the rich are going to get taxed more and the wealthy are going to get taxed more. But the reality of the situation is that the wealthy cannot pay taxes, or they will not pay the taxes because the tax law has lots of loopholes that the wealthy use so that they don't pay taxes. So the ones who get taxed the most when they raise these taxes are the middle class, working class. And like in one of my previous jobs, I was looking at the amount of taxes getting taken out, and it was the equivalent of me working an entire week for free. And I was like, "Are you serious? You're taking out that much?" Every time I got paid, it was like I was going through a divorce. They took half my check almost, and then in the end, they give you a little small percentage of that. And then seeing that the government is out there wasting your money, it's crazy. When I look at the creed of the Republican Party, the actual what it is they stand for in writing, it identifies more with my Christian conservative views, so I tend to vote more Republican. Having said that, I believe that is corruption on both sides. I believe there's a lot of corruption right now on both sides, and I can see what you're saying, Jason, about when we vote by party, it tends to like modify and smut things up. I agree. Like it tends to do that. If I saw a Republican and I honestly, or excuse me, a Democrat that I felt was honestly fighting more for the people and fighting to stand against the establishment and was sincere and has that track record, I think I would vote for the Democrat over the Republican if I felt that they were better candidate. And you bring up another good point as well that we're being influenced by our by media and everything like that because as I said in a previous broadcast, how often or how many times have you seen an independent actually get on the debate stage? I think the only person I ever saw or heard of was Ross Perot, and that was like back in the 90s, like way long ago. But we don't hear about the independents yet. Every time we have a voters ballot, there's tons of people on there that we have never heard of or seen because the media is controlling who we're hearing from. They're controlling the voices we hear when it comes down to politics and stuff like that. So yeah, we're being manipulated. There is no secret about that. The question is that I believe, or excuse me, not the question, but the fact is that a lot of us are not willing to go do our own research. Like there is a series on Netflix called Self Made, talking about a black legendary millionaire who happened to be the first black woman million. Excuse me, the first black female millionaire. Um, this is like back in like 1909 or something like that, and she had created this hair treatment that helped people lose or regain their hair, help women regain their hair and take better care of their hair in the salon as well to apply it. So she built an enterprise off this. And this is a real woman. And so the Netflix series, while they're depicting her, and this is saying this is based on actual events. This is supposed to be, like a biographical type of film. While they're talking about this, they are showing a biracial woman who is the antagonist of this story, who's based on an actual woman who happens to not be biracial. And then, which has actually been something that goes back to the slave times. The house slaves tend to be the light skinned slaves, and they were against the darker slaves. They were always treated better. So there was a rivalry between the light skin and the dark skin. They just didn't like each other because of the way the master favoritized the light skinned and they had the easier work conditions as opposed to the dark skinned slaves who had to work in the fields regardless of the weather. Um, so there's definitely that rivalry there. So that was just kind of reinciting that rivalry that's been passed down between darker skinned individuals and lighter skinned individuals in today's times. There's still that rivalry in lots of places. But going back to the Netflix series, now they talk about the daughter of Madam CJ Walker, and they are showing signs that this girl happened to be lesbian, or excuse me, bisexual, or had lesbian tendencies and actually preferred women. Now, a lot of people from the alphabet community would probably be like, "What's the big deal? It's just a movie. It's just a show. Don't get so sensitive about it." Well, the truth is that Madam CJ Walker's daughter was not lesbian by any means, nor bisexual. She was married 3 times to men. She had no heterosexual tendencies at all. Now, people from the alphabet community or other people might think, What's the big deal? Why are you so offended about that?" Well, let's put the shoe on the other foot. What if during the movie Rocket Man, when they were showing Elton John and they were depicting his life and his career and his lifestyle, what if they were to make it the whole movie he had a wife and kids? He was not gay, he was straight. The alphabet community will get pretty pissed off about that and say, "No, he's gay. Why are you going to make him something he's not?" If you're going to do a biographical film, it should be biographical. You should not change who people were. If someone was a dark-skinned individual, the actor playing that person should be dark-skinned as well. They should resemble as close as possible to the actual person they are depicting. You would not have Tom Hanks in there playing Dr. Martin Luther King. Like, it is the person is supposed to look as close as possible to the person they're representing in the film. So yeah, I'm really irritated by that. I felt really irritated when I found that stuff out when I started doing my research on that because I was like, wait a minute, Madam CJ Walker's daughter was lesbian? What the heck? So I started looking into that and I'm like, wow. And I found out that was BS. And there's a number of other things saying that this woman happened to move 12,000 miles or move thousands of miles, not 12,000 miles, move thousands of miles just to come over and actually um put Madam CJ Walker's business down and work against her and stuff like that when that never happened. So they made this thing out to be something else, and they actually smuttered Madam CJ Walker up quite a bit in this film or in this series, and it's really unfair, I think, and I think that um, the media is definitely making a lot of us stupid by pushing one side over the other rather than just spitting the facts. Like this candidate for president or for office believes these things, and this is what this bill that they're pushing says. Rather than doing that, they're saying, "Oh, this bill," and they talk about the highlights of things that they like. "Oh, this bill is going to help give Americans this and this and this and this." They're like, "Oh, good, I'm going to vote for that bill," because they know most people are not going to read the entirety of that bill. But what you don't know is that bill is also going to cause lots of problems for you by raising your taxes and doing all this other stuff. They don't talk about that. So essentially, because we have so much of a flood of information available at our fingertips with a simple click, most of us will, because of TikTok and because of small, short YouTube videos, our attention spans have diminished. Rather than spend time reading a book, we would rather hear the audiobook. Let someone else tell us. Rather than actually do the research ourselves and look and read literature from reliable sources, we're out there. Let me watch a video about it, or let me watch a TikTok about it. And in 3 minutes, we expect to hear every detail of facts we need to hear. We're not, I think so. Jason brings up a good point. And it makes me think as well after that, after hearing that, a lot of us have become stupid. A lot of us have become stupid, whether willingly or unwillingly, because of how often we refuse to do our own research and just adopt the statements made by other people we like. Personally, I think when Jason was talking about what has the government done right, one of the things recently that I noticed was Matt Gaetz, who's a senator in the House, and a number of other Republican senators they have agreed to with Matt McCarthy, who is the House Speaker. They agreed that with various conditions that would hold Matt McCarthy accountable to make decisions and make choices that are actually going to, benefit the American people rather than just being another swamp rat and fighting for power and doing whatever they want to do. So having the Republicans debate with each other is actually how democracy is supposed to work. People are supposed to discuss various things and discuss differences. That's how the Republicans and Democrats and independents were created to be. They're supposed to debate and discuss differences so that they can come to a conclusion, or excuse me, come to an agreement together as a team. Just like in a football team, not everybody has the same idea of how things are supposed to be doing, and not everyone has the same job. The quarterback gets the ball to where it's supposed to be. You got the linemen who are supposed to block, and you got runners who are supposed to run. Everyone has a job, but that job works as a team. What's up, Hakeem? Welcome.
This is I hate this subject. I hate stupid people. You ever you ever see that old movie, The Day the Earth Stood Still? And
Yes.
the alien Kawato, he goes, "I'm impatient with stupidity." It's like my favorite line in the whole movie. That's my thing, man. You know, I didn't really catch the topic, but I just came on here and saw that. I don't think I ever spoke to you before, so. Uh, but yeah, man, it's a thing. And the one thing I did hear you say was about people sound stupid, basically, even if they're not, because they don't do their research. That's a big thing. I'm a research scientist. That's all I do all day long. But I'm also very metaphysically minded, so I'm pretty well rounded. Because for
Good.
one, I'm on the ground. I teach martial arts. I run a martial arts school, and I do security, and so I'm like really hands on with a lot of stuff. But then I'm also, I got degrees in comparative religion and metaphysics and English, so I have my head's in the clouds and a lot of stuff. But then I study all the natural and hard sciences like mathematics, physics, chemistry, biology, and every single day. It's like one of the main things I actually do on this platform is read something I have called technical news reading. And so all the stuff that I would normally be reading for myself, I read them out loud and just kind of go through something I created called World Reading Club. And sometimes, people will say stuff to me, and I'm like, that doesn't even make sense in any level of existence. Like, it's like what you're saying doesn't make sense metaphysically, psychologically, or like scientifically. I was like, where are you coming from? Like, it's just some things just have no reason or logic whatsoever.
Hmm.
So, what's one thing that people are debating about that really gets on your nerves right now, or at least that you find that doesn't make any sense? It's really stupid.
The subject of Trump, like talking about the January 6th and all that stuff like that.
Oh,
Like, cause I get a lot of people, like, there's a number of tweets that Trump has sent out and statements he's made with which I disagree. Like, he's not a perfect dude. He was not, ever a good role model for us to strive to be like. But, like, I wish they would have covered neutrally what he actually did for the country, how effective he was. Because sometimes,
right,
like in a company, we often have that one employee who's a douchebag. You can't stand him, you don't
right,
like him, but he's the most effective worker there. Like, that's
right.
what Trump was. He was the guy that people didn't like, but he was effective at what he did. And I wish the media would have actually covered what he did fairly.
I can relate. That's kind of the position I take most of the time because I feel like I get a lot of stuff done, but I'm not trying to get people to love me for it. And you don't need to in order to get things done. Like as you just pointed out very clearly with a very high-profile figure. You know, um, and another thing in the reverse of that was really stupid is how much praise people gave to Barack Obama just because he had skin tone like me, like melanated, even darker, right? So people
Mhm.
just voted for him for that reason. But the dude got up on a platform one day and was like, "Yeah, we tortured some folks," and so his policies were just out of control.
Yeah.
And it's like we tortured some folks. That's something you just kind of gloss over, sir.
Yeah. And
With the,
go ahead.
yeah, I mean, no, I was just saying that's just kind of one of the things people just overlook those things,
Yeah.
and don't look at the policies and like how people actually he's sending more troops in. He's supposed to start, help people to get out of there, and like all the reverse and like some of the worst policies were in place because of that.
I agree. And that's the media right now. The media just when they back a candidate, that's it. Rather than like reporting the news fairly and honestly, they want to back candidates.
Right. Exactly. If they're backing the label and rather than the content, backing the name, like a brand, rather than what it actually is doing.
Absolutely. Thank you
Yeah.
so
So
much, brother. I appreciate you joining the show. Well said. I think when it comes down to everything, I just want to close with this. When it comes down to everything, when we're dealing with stupid people, humility and again, there's a wide range of what we can consider a stupid person. But people who are just acting ignorant, people who are acting, stupidly. Like we all have a version what we consider stupid people, and you know what I mean. So, but and then the on the opposite side of the coin, we could be stupid people as well if we don't do our own research. And if we have more information, we can actually see with clearer eyes what's really going on. And we can have a little more mercy for people who are doing their best. Thank you so much for inviting me into your homes, into your ears, into your jobs, and into your phones. Thank you for spending time with me. As always, I'm very grateful for each of you, and I love each of you. Have a great day. And thank you for listening to Real Talk with RJ, signing out.